Where it grows wild around the Aegean Sea in the eastern Mediterranean, the wallflower is a plant of rocky places, only introduced to gardens here in the late 16th century. But if it gets half a chance, it will anchor itself on old walls or between paving stones, which is where these plants settled in of their own accord maybe 20 or 30 years ago. But old walls are as close as the wallflower is going to get to the habitats of its native home. But one reason for elevating it to honorary wildflower status is that it has large flowers, which makes it much easier to examine the characteristic floral blueprint of its very important cabbage family, the cruciferae, which has several hundred in plants which are important in culinary terms or in some cases for their medicinal value. And the flowers are exceptionally fragrant, with a violet-like fragrance that's characteristic of flowers that are pollinated particularly by bees, although they are also visited on occasion by other insects which have tongues that are long enough to access the nectar in its floral pipettes, which are 10 to 15 millimeters deep. At first glance, wallflower doesn't appear to have a nectar-bearing pipette. All you see are 4 petals, yellow, orange or reddish-brown in colour usually, but look at the way the lower half of each petal narrows to a claw at right angles to the coloured blade, and these 4 claws are dovetailed together to form a narrow tube that is held in place by the 4 tightly overlapping sepals. The 2 outer sepals are boat-shaped, and if you dissect the flower you will see the way they are in front of the outer 2 of the 6 stamens, and at the base of each of these 2 sepals is a little sac. This stores the nectar, which is secreted by rings of green tissue around the base of those 2 outer stamens. We could spend much more time than we have about the many medicinal uses of wallflower. It was considered a singular remedy for gout, to which we could add ague, which was a form of malaria, abscesses, sores, ulcers, cataracts. It had several uses in obstetrics, and it was used to make perfume. And in conclusion, I want to reflect on that a little bit. The more erudite among you may know that one of the most famous passages in modern European literature comes at the very beginning of Marcel Proust's monumental 13-volume In Search of Times Past, where he talks about the extraordinary ability of memory to anchor a particular smell or taste in the first time and place that you experience it. And then, possibly years later, when you encounter that same smell or taste again, memory projects an image of the first time and place you encountered it with sometimes extraordinary vividness. Scent unstoppers memory is how the poet Philip Oakes describes this. So you might like to ponder the implications of the fact that the part of our brain that registers and stores smell is comparatively small, as compared with a dog, for example, where 3/4 of the brain is concerned with smell, or a fish, most of whose brain does so. And you cannot help but marvel at how little we know of the world in which we live when you ask yourself the question, given how the smell of the flower, wallflower, or rose, or violet, or furze, affects us, to what Proustian moments must it give rise in the senses and memory of the bee for which it is properly intended?